Before this war even began, the U.S. military already knew what Iran would do. America's top general warned the president Iran would mine the Strait of Hormuz, launch drones and fire missiles across the region. But the assumption in Washington was simple. Iran would surrender before any of that happened. 2 weeks later, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, 300 ships are stranded, and Iranian missiles are now hitting Israeli cities. The real story of this war isn't just the attacks, it's the strategy behind them. Before the first missiles were launched, and before the confrontation between United States and Iran escalated into open conflict, military planners had already outlined how Tehran was likely to respond. Inside classified briefings in Washington, intelligence analysts and senior officers presented a series of scenarios describing Iran's potential strategy. Among those delivering these assessments was Dan Kane, who reportedly warned that Iran possessed multiple ways to retaliate if its territory came under direct attack. According to these briefings, Tehran would likely focus on asymmetric responses rather than conventional battlefield engagements. One predicted move involved disrupting maritime traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Military planners expected Iran could deploy naval mines or small attack craft capable of threatening commercial shipping. Other projections warned of missile strikes and drone attacks targeting regional bases and allied infrastructure. These possibilities had already been examined in previous war games and strategic simulations. On paper, the scenarios suggested that any conflict could expand quickly across the region, yet the political expectations surrounding the operation were different. Some decision-makers believed Iran's leadership would collapse under pressure or seek negotiations before fully implementing its retaliation plans. That assumption would soon prove to be one of the most consequential strategic miscalculations at the start of the war. As the confrontation unfolded, some analysts began describing Iran's response not as a single wave of retaliation, but as a structured, multi-stage strategy. The first phase appeared to focus on Israel's early warning infrastructure. Radar installations and sensor networks responsible for detecting incoming threats are among the most critical components of any missile defense architecture. Without reliable detection, interception systems cannot calculate trajectories or launch defensive missiles in time. According to several assessments, Iranian strikes in the early stages of the conflict may have been directed toward degrading these capabilities. Facilities connected to Israel's surveillance and intelligence network, including systems associated with the Israel Defense Forces, were reportedly among the suspected targets. By disrupting or degrading early warning coverage, attackers can reduce the reaction time available to defenders. The second phase appeared to focus on exhausting the defensive shield itself. Israel's layered air defense network includes systems such as Iron Dome and Arrow, designed to intercept incoming rockets and ballistic missiles at different altitudes. Continuous missile launches forced these systems to remain active for extended periods. Each alert triggered radar tracking, interceptor launches, and rapid operational decisions. Over time, this constant defensive posture constrained both equipment and personnel. In strategic terms, the objective of such pressure is not always immediate destruction. Sometimes it is preparation, shaping the battlefield before the next phase of attacks begins. After days of sustained pressure on Israel's defensive network, analysts began noticing a new phase in the attack pattern. Once early warning coverage had been challenged and interceptor systems kept active for extended periods, Iranian forces appeared to introduce a different type of weapon into the battlefield: ballistic missiles carrying cluster payloads. Unlike conventional missiles that deliver a single explosive warhead, these weapons release multiple submunitions during the final phase of flight. As the missile descends toward its target area, the payload separates and disperses dozens of smaller bomblets across a wide radius. Each submunition then falls independently toward the ground. For defensive systems operated by the Israel Defense Forces, this type of attack creates a dramatically more complex problem. Missile interception systems such as Iron Dome are typically designed to track and destroy individual incoming projectiles before they reach populated areas. But once a cluster payload separates, the situation changes rapidly. Instead of intercepting one target, defenders may suddenly face dozens of smaller objects descending simultaneously across a wide area. Many of these bomblets follow unpredictable trajectories and are too small to track individually within the available response time. According to several reports circulating during the conflict, interception systems struggled to engage the submunitions once separation occurred. In practical terms, once the cluster payload deployed, defensive interception became extremely difficult, and that moment marked a critical shift in the dynamics of the attack. While missile exchanges dominated headlines on land, another front of the conflict was unfolding at sea. Iran began turning the Strait of Hormuz into what military planners often describe as a maritime kill zone. This narrow passage, linking the Persian Gulf to global shipping lanes, is one of the most strategically important waterways in the world. Roughly a fifth of global oil shipments normally move through this corridor. According to regional monitoring reports, Iranian forces deployed a layered network of threats across the strait. Naval mines were reportedly positioned along key shipping routes, while surveillance drones monitored vessel movements across the waterway. Along the Iranian coastline, anti-ship missile batteries were placed on heightened alert. These coastal launch systems can target vessels traveling through the narrow maritime corridor, creating overlapping engagement zones that make navigation extremely risky. Fast attack boats and patrol craft were also reported operating in the area, adding another layer of unpredictability for commercial traffic. The result was a sudden halt in normal shipping patterns. At one point, maritime tracking data indicated that more than 300 commercial vessels were waiting or drifting inside the Gulf, reluctant to pass through the strait while the threat environment remained uncertain. Even naval forces faced difficult operational conditions. Although the United States Navy maintains a strong presence in the region, escorting commercial ships through a heavily mined and missile-covered corridor presents significant risks. In practical terms, the waterway had become one of the most dangerous shipping routes in the world. The disruption in the Strait of Hormuz quickly began affecting far more than regional military operations. This narrow maritime corridor carries roughly 20% of the world's traded oil supply. Tankers transporting crude from Gulf producers pass through the strait before reaching refineries and markets across Europe, Asia, and beyond. When shipping slows in this channel, the impact spreads through global energy systems almost immediately. As tensions increased, maritime insurers began raising premiums for vessels entering the Gulf. In some cases, the cost of insuring a tanker voyage through the strait climbed so dramatically that shipping companies began reconsidering whether the journey was financially viable at all. Several operators chose to delay departures or reroute vessels entirely. Economic calculations soon revealed a striking problem. For certain shipments, the cost of naval escorts, war risk insurance, and potential delays began exceeding the value of the cargo itself. In practical terms, moving oil through the corridor was becoming economically irrational. Energy markets reacted quickly to the uncertainty. Traders monitoring the situation began pricing in the possibility of supply disruption, pushing crude prices upward as fears of prolonged instability spread. What had begun as a regional military confrontation was now producing global economic consequences. If the strait remained partially closed for even a short period, the ripple effects could reach industries and consumers around the world. The conflict was no longer confined to missiles and naval patrols. It was beginning to reshape the economics of global energy trade. At the beginning of the conflict, many political calculations in United States and allied capitals rested on a central assumption. The belief was that intense military pressure would quickly destabilize Iran's leadership. Some policymakers expected that economic strain, internal dissent, and external attacks might force the government to seek negotiations or even trigger internal political collapse. But the reality unfolded differently. Instead of fragmentation, the confrontation appeared to consolidate political support inside Iran. Nationalist sentiment intensified as the country faced external attacks, and rival factions within the political system temporarily closed ranks. In the midst of the crisis, Iran's leadership structure underwent a significant transition following the death of Ali Khamenei. A new supreme leader was selected, and the transition was framed domestically as a moment of continuity and resistance. Rather than signaling retreat, the new leadership publicly vowed to continue confronting external pressure. missile launches continued, and Iranian forces maintained their posture in the Strait of Hormuz, sustaining the disruption of maritime traffic through one of the world's most critical energy corridors. From a strategic perspective, the outcome highlighted a fundamental miscalculation. The expectation of rapid capitulation had underestimated the resilience of Iran's political system during wartime. Instead of ending the confrontation quickly, the initial assumptions helped create conditions for a longer and more complex conflict, one whose consequences were now extending far beyond the original battlefield.